see it shining on the street again. We're all cooking underneath the heat of it, and everyone thinks they got it right. Well, none of us need it, but we'll never feel safe again. Can't just leave it. I gotta get the last word in. Oh, I feel it at night, shining on the streets when I'm standing under your gaslight, standing under your gaslight.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to Takeover Tuesday. That's just such a cool song that I just didn't want to overpower it with a huge, big energy type intro. But I'm your host, Benner, and welcome to Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday. And I'm here with the amazing composer, singer, songwriter. You wear a lot of hats like myself, Steph Copeland. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
And hey, listen, like we just we're going to dive into a whole ton of stuff because your body of work is extensive, to say the least. But let's talk about this new single, Gaslight. Just came out. You just dropped it on YouTube as well as anywhere that you can listen to music. So it's available through iTunes, Spotify, all the major streaming services. Let's jump right in. Like, what can you tell us about the song, and how did you end up working with it's Bridget O'Regan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's jump in. Let's talk about that because it's an absolute awesome tune and it's such a great video. And I watched it the first time and I was like, man, this is such a cool track. It's so chill, but also it's just banging. So what can you tell us about it?
Thanks. So I think it's possible that you've actually met Bridget before at one of the Black Fawn premieres.
Okay. Yeah.
is a violinist who I've often worked on scores with. We've done The Heretics and I'll Take Your Dead. And I believe it was after the I'll Take Your Dead score, we had a day-long session in the studio. And after that, she tells me it's her birthday. And so to celebrate, we got a bottle of Jameson and we started writing that original song, Gaslight. And we sort of bonded over, you know, what Gaslight meant for both of us. For me, it was a lot about, like, Donald Trump was doing a lot of tweeting at that time. And so everything was so inflammatory. So for me, like, it had a very general, like a blanket meaning in a way, that, like, essentially there's like the gaslighting of a nation going on. Like, everyone's sort of triggered by a lot of stuff that's coming from the top down. Not just him either, but like just everything felt very inflamed. And Bridget and I were also discussing, you know, sort of scenarios where we were in professional music settings, and also just at our day job. Like, I used to, you know, have a day job as a bartender, and, you know, there's always someone who's in a professional setting. There's oftentimes, that we found in common, somebody who would say things that would just come out of nowhere and set you on a certain mindset that made you feel like you were crazy. But you weren't. You're dealing with someone who's, like, narcissistic and gaslighting you, and whether they're even aware they're doing it or not. So we thought that was a very important topic to sort of write about. And so we started Gaslight. And we got a lot of writing done that night, and we sort of chipped away at it over time. And with the pandemic here, we were able to really finish the song. And
Awesome. Well, like I said, it's an absolute a great track, for sure. If you like what you heard, please go to Spotify and give it a listen there, or obviously purchase it on iTunes if you can. But and the video is so cool too, because it just and I think you've worked with Sean McLeod before, right? As in a couple of times. How did the video come together? Was that always, like, part of the plan to kind of say, hey, now we've got this song, like let's give it a visual representation and kind of really put something to it? And obviously, like, when you have sort of this style of video, it's hard to kind of integrate that into just one track. Like, how are you going to keep that going for a few minutes? But it's an absolutely cool video as well, and it really kind of brings out the song, which is hard to do as well.
Yeah, the video, originally, Jeff Mahar is the cinematographer, and as many people know, but many may not know, is also my fiance, and he shoots a lot of Black Fawn films, maybe almost all of them. But he and I had discussed, what are we going to do for this video? And we always thought we wanted to have it to be a dance performance. And at first we were thinking maybe it'd be two little girls, and I had some friends who had these young girls who were phenomenal dancers, and they knew each other, and they were going to maybe coordinate something. And then we had shifted it to maybe a male ballet dancer. And then after that, everything, we couldn't make schedules line up. And then we shifted to maybe it was going to be Bridget and I just in like a 5D and do something really quick. But then we showed the track to Sean, and Sean said, I got an idea. And he said, it's going to be this, and this, and which is exactly what you see in the video. And he didn't know that we originally wanted it to be a dance piece. And so he made that happen, and he had Murph come out, who just electrified the screen. And Jeff,
yeah, she's awesome in it. Like, it's just like, and it builds too, right? It's like, by the end, I'm just like, man, this is like, you're engaged, you're right in there, like you're on the street with her, which is super cool too, right?
She was magnetic. And it was a super small crew because we shot it during the pandemic, and right. Jeff's running around with like a lighting her as she moves, and then Blake is on the Steadicam rig, like just everybody's running around and trying to keep it tight, and like everything happened. I was running around with a Bose speaker for playback, like
skip back, fast forward, we need this part. Yeah,
and then we're going to another location, and there's like an A&W right there. We're like going, grabbing food, throwing it around to everybody, and then 6 hours later, the shoot was finished because we didn't want to be, hanging out during a lockdown and at night.
When did you start filming that video? Like, obviously it's at night, but when did you start filming and stop filming then? Because if it was a night shoot,
it was one night. It started at 9 p.m. and went. I think we were trying to get the last few shots at around 1:30. Maybe.
Nice.
Yeah.
And no instances like nobody stopping and saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" Like the cops show up, because I know that happens sometimes, especially. But now there's nobody out, so I'm not sure.
We ran around thinking there were police at one point dealing with something else, so we just didn't want to draw attention to ourselves. Some people said on the street, were like, "Yo, what's that song?" So that was cool.
Dropping next month, yo. Well, listen, just before we get any further, I just want to let everyone know that if you're tuning in right now, thank you very much. Don't forget to comment down below if you're watching on Facebook Live. So throw your comments down below in the comment section, and we can throw them up on the screen, and we'll try to get to some of them during the broadcast. So if you have a question for Steph about her songs, both as a singer-songwriter, as a composer, we're going to get to that in a second. Feel free to post them down below, and we will try and get to them if we have time. So let's talk about a little bit about this, because I had a tough time even writing some of the questions down, because I was like, are you a composer? Are you a singer-songwriter? What do you like to go by? Do you have a discography, or is it just a filmography? Is it both? How do you see yourself as an artist? Because I guess that would be the all-encompassing term for what you do. But what do you consider yourself on a day-to-day basis?
100% both, equally, probably. Okay. That is the big question for my life. I would say, like, my number one battle. And I think that I have to do both because I love it, and both define me equally. So I would say I'm a composer artist. The only reason why I put composer first is because I do it more often.
Okay, fair enough.
And but the best thing about my job is a lot of the times I get to write original songs for the films that I'm working on. Like for The Oak Room, for example, we did Love Didn't Care for Me for the final song. And that really feeds me a lot. So that's a huge bonus to be able to.
And do you find that sort of that's kind of a trade-off of doing both, is that you can kind of you sort of can get into doing an original song as well as part of the score, yeah. Or as a almost like an epilogue to the score that you've just done? Is that something that kind of gets you into it kind of puts a full stop on that project and gets you on to the next thing?
Yeah, does it tie it up with a bow kind of?
Yeah,
absolutely. And it also helps me because I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm really influenced by the films that I'm working on. So if I can funnel all that into this nice tight little 3-minute and 30-second thing, or longer, or whatever it requires, and just kind of get on the mic and do some lyrics and some actual songwriting in more of a popular fashion, then yeah, absolutely, it's really cathartic for me as well. So let's talk about singing and songwriting. Did you start that first and then move into film composition, or was it the other way around? Yeah, I started as a singer-songwriter, and then went into making music for film. I started with the guitar and piano lessons and vocal lessons as a kid, and then as a teenager I got into electronic music, and I started getting into drum machines and things like that. And yeah, after that I found my way into cinematic scoring. So let's talk about your singing and songwriting career. So we've known each other for a long time. We've seen each other on different projects and that sort of stuff. I am going to show you that I do still have this, which is your debut album, Public Panic. This is the actual physical copy. I think I don't know if there's any of these left, right? I think they're all sold out, right? I have they're in a box somewhere. I don't know that that's relevant anymore, having a physical CD.
Well, it's part of my collection. I'm a huge music nerd, so I do collect physical stuff. I love physical discs, so I do still have this in my collection. It featured the sing.
We won't get rid of our 2011 Matrix because it still has a CD player. That's the only reason we're.
Yeah. You never know, right? I mean, like, not everything is on streaming. Everything, like a lot of stuff is, but not absolutely everything. So it's great to pull that out. And I also just like showing people like how much street cred I have by having your CD in my collection. So, but that was released a few years ago. It featured the single Nadia, which you shot a video for in Sitges, Spain.
Yeah.
When the whole Black Fawn crew, including yourself and Jeff, were over there for Sitges International Film Festival. Are you working on a follow-up album? Is that something that you think you might do one day, or is it just, do you think more that it's, let's say it's more of a singles market as far as like just putting out individual songs and each individual song is its own project, or do you think there's still a need to have a collection of material out there?
It just worked out that all I have are singles right now, because between projects, that's what I have time to sort of muster. But I absolutely want to put out another full-length album, a follow-up to Public Panic. I've got so much. I've got a folder that's got a ton of song ideas that is just ready to go, and I have a lot of concepts that I really want to explore for the album. So yes, I plan on having a full-length album come out within the next 365 days.
So and if you haven't heard it, you can definitely certainly check it out on iTunes. I believe it's on Spotify as well, correct? So people can check it out there. It's well worth it. It's amazing. The single's awesome as well, Nadia. If you check out the video, it's a very, very cool video shot in Sitges, Spain. And who actually shot that video then?
That's Jeff.
It was Jeff, right? Okay, yeah. I figured so. I figured as much. But and talk to us about like that record's release. Like how I've talked to a lot of artists and a lot of bands and a lot of singers over the years, and it's like having that first record kind of come out is such a cathartic experience because it's so much work and it might be years in the making. Is that how you felt when that record kind of finally came out and you were doing shows and that sort of stuff?
Absolutely. And I learned so much about what it is to put out music and then to perform the music, and the way you start to feel about the songs after they're released and how it totally shifts from the way you wrote them. It was a huge learning experience, and the follow-up, I mean, I've put out an EP since Public Panic called Duel, but it's not the same as putting out a full-length album. There are growing pains, and again, like having a really big cathartic experience in putting out an LP. And I've got so much that I'd like to put forward for the LP that I think surprises even myself, and so I'm really excited to get going on that.
Awesome. Well, let's switch gears a little bit because we're going to jump into talking about your film scoring work, and I'm going to run down almost a complete list of all the projects that you've worked on because it's so impressive how many there are. You're like the go-to person now, I think, for film scoring. And so before we get into that, let's jump into a couple comments. I just wanted to throw it out here. So people are tuning in right now. Quick comment from John McIsaac. He said, great video, Steph. As well as Brad McMillan saying, the violin sounds great with almost an Eastern feel to that. Was that something you were going for in that song, or did that just kind of bubble to the surface?
That's Bridget's domain. She rocked that solo, like the instrumental violin solo, in like 2 or 3 takes. Like she just had it. So that might be a good question for her. I know that she comes from a bit of a fiddling background, so maybe if you're hearing an Eastern feel, it might be East Coast feel to it.
Brad, if you're can you clarify? Are you talking about Middle Eastern feel, or are you talking about East Coast Canadian feel? Well, we'll see if we can get an answer from Brad. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. Is Brad from the East Coast? Brad, are you from the East Coast? Tell us. We need to know. Yeah. So let me just see here. And And just a quick question or a quick comment from Alexander. He says, "Hey Steph, your music has been a big inspiration for the music my band does. Keep up the good work." And also just a comment, obviously, from one of our mutual good buddies, always at a loss for words, Christopher Giroux, with just a happy face. So, G, if you're out there, if you can ask us a question, that would be great. So next time we can throw something up there. I'm sure he'll get a laugh out of that. But but let's jump into talking about your film scoring career. You said you started out as a singer-songwriter, then you jumped into film. Do you know when the exact moment was that you kind of transitioned from doing kind of like, let's say, like 4-minute, 5-minute songs maybe, or 3 to 5 minute songs, into doing like full scores for feature-length films?
Well, it was I was sort of burnt out on the music scene, just playing live shows and putting out, like, I was putting out indie albums and selling them side stage, but I was sort of in this place where I wasn't sure what the next step was going to be for me. I was living in Windsor at the time, and I was sort of, I think, just burnt out on that scene a little bit. When I met Jeff, and he was shooting Antisocial, and my very first film score was Antisocial, which was perfect because it was an electronic score that Cody Callahan directed, and it was his first feature. It was not Jeff's first feature, but definitely mine. And I had played Cody some just songs that I sort of I wasn't sure what I was doing with them, but they were pretty cinematic and they had a lot of electronic elements to them. And he was just like, "Yep, okay, learn how to score a movie."
More of that, do it. Yeah.
Just kidding, Cody, if you're listening. It wasn't like that. But, it was kind of a sink or swim scenario, and I had to get up to speed pretty quickly. And I had an older version of Pro Tools. I had to like sort of dive in and get a newer DAW. I ended up going with Ableton and Pro Tools as well. I used both, but I did not have like the tech specs. Like, I didn't know what technical difficulties and issues I would be dealing with. So I was doing a lot of flying, it was really sink or swim. So I just didn't have an option to sink. So I swam.
So, and you know what? I mean, we're certainly glad you did, right? Because I'm just going to run down some of your most notable soundtracks here, because I think it's worth just letting our audience know. You obviously, like you just mentioned, you started out with Antisocial. You've done The Drownsman, Ejecta. Also, you've done The Door, Bite, Antisocial 2, The Hexecutioner, Save Yourself, Better the Dead, Let Her Out, The Heretics, I'll Take Your Dead, Creep Nation, partial score on that one. After the Storm. What else here? And then obviously you've done Perfect Plan. Most recently you did The Oak Room, and you've just finished Vicious Fun as well. I'm just touching the surface. You have a way more credits on that. If anyone's interested, check out Steph's IMDb under Steph Copeland. It's phenomenal to see kind of how many projects you've worked on. Is there like, how do you look back on that now? So we're talking like, I mean, Antisocial it was less than 10 years ago. Like, it's not like it was like, you're a veteran of this business now, but it's not like you've been in the business for 40 years either, right? So how do you look back on those original scores, and do you see that evolution of yourself as a composer over the years?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, I look back at some of those old scores and I'm like, you really didn't know what you were doing, huh?
Do you still reference those? Like, I mean, as far as like I don't want to say a moment of learning, but like, do you go back and listen to them and say, and pick up things that you might do differently now?
Oh yeah, for sure. Every now and again, I think maybe I'll go back in and I'll like do a remix score of that, like, or like put out a remix album of all the score pieces.
Oh, don't tell our fans that. I'll get 100 emails.
Pump it all up and like, I don't know, remaster it, do a bunch of crazy stuff to it. But I think that's also because in the past 10 years, the tech has, the sounds and have been that are coming out like are just phenomenal, and I've got more access to bigger and better, and I maybe that crappy little string patch I was using back during Antisocial, like now I've got like the deluxe everything, and I just want to like go deluxe everything.
full orchestra.
But some, you know what, looking back though, like I was listening to Bite not too long ago, and I was like, oh yeah, some of those textures and some of that stuff's pretty juicy and good. So like some is terrible and some is fine. From back in the day.
And one of the things I noticed as well is like,
I'm being harsh. It's just everything has come such a long way. That's all.
Yeah, and also as well, like I always tell people like about this with movies as well, is that you watch a movie, let's say 5 years ago, you're looking at it through that lens, right? And then you watch it 5 years later and you're looking through a different lens. Like you're not necessarily the same person, right? And that's why I think like movies sometimes they stand the test of time and some don't, right? Because you're just watching it. It's kind of like when you watch a movie like in your 30s that you watched in high school, and you're like, man, like I remember that being like way better for some reason. But it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just different, right? Because you're seeing it through maybe a different set of eyes. So, or I guess in this case,
years.
You're hearing it through years. Yeah. So let's when you just mentioned strings and how now you have the deluxe everything. Some of that deluxe everything is working with other artists, and especially in the last two sound. Well, we won't say the last two scores, but the releases that we've put out, we obviously put out Bed of the Dead, and but more recently, I'll Take Your Dead, and obviously you just finished the Black Fawn Films production for Oak Room. Oak Room and I'll Take Your Dead really did lean on strings and on violin in those scores. They're amazingly haunting pieces. I thought you right up in your explanation of what you did with the Oak Room was amazing, as far as like not quite finishing like those arrangements in on purpose to make sure that it kind of fit with the storytelling nature of the film. Is that something that you think you're really going to continue with, I think, or is it Vicious Fun? We can talk about it in a second, but Vicious Fun is totally different. No strings there because it's a more of an 80s synth score. But are strings something you're always drawn to as far as like exploiting for that kind of haunting atmosphere?
I mean, it depends on the piece, 100%. But they do a lot of heavy lifting, but it has to be right for the film, because sometimes strings are just not it. It is, if it doesn't lean on any orchestral or classical, if the film is, like more like Vicious Fun, for example, or even what was another one we did that was a lot more synth based? Well, Antisocial and Antisocial 2. I mean, that was a little bit more of a blend, but the one thing I do love is working with live musicians whenever I can. And in 3 instances now, I've used live violin, like with Eugene Draw for the Oak Room, who came in and just wowed the score. Like, just really, he felt it. You could see him I wish I would have taken video of him emoting in the room. He was just so present in the piece, and we had to find where we were going and find our footing a little bit. But once we got there, it was absolutely perfect.
And that's the score you said that some of his parts were completely improvised on the spot. Do I have that right?
Yeah, we sort of had like a search and destroy session. Like we had score beds, and we knew he was going to top line with the violin on it. And so what we were doing was he was experimenting with different melodic lines, and I was listening and humming some ideas, and he would do this, that, and the other thing. And we sort of mind melded and found these lines that ended up saying exactly what we wanted to say. It just was an experiment, and we just he riffed, and I was just humming along and having ideas and making suggestions, and he would play it, and between the two of us, it ended up being this really beautiful line.
And that's one thing. I mean, obviously they're both Black Fawn films, right? But I always felt that the violin work and the score at the end of I'll Take Your Dead was very, very haunting and very, very like a very final moment for that film, and seeing that kind of carry on into Oak Room in a completely different way, but in a very it's just, to me, it's mind-boggling how much you can capture the atmosphere of the characters and the story and what's happening in those films in any one particular case. And at the start of Okrum, it's a little bit of almost like a mini overture when the movie starts, and when people have an ability to check it out, I highly recommend it. But but it does set the tone for the whole movie. Is that something you did, like that you thought, hey, we should do this at the start of the movie, or how does that come to? Like, I remember, sorry, not to digress, but I know I saw an interview with Danny Elfman once, and Danny Elfman said that Tim Burton lets him do whatever he wants for the opening credits. Like, he can go as bananas as he wants, and that's usually why those are they're so all over the place and stuff. But for Okrum, did you feel like you wanted to start the movie like that, or was that something that was decided maybe afterwards?
We definitely had a guideline from Cody for the opening credit sequence. Like, we knew that there was going to be a recurring theme, and Cody actually had a lot of the music for the Okrum really planned out. Like, he knew where it was coming in, and he had all of sort of the start points were really there. So that part of the work was sort of done for me, which was great. Thanks. So we knew that theme was going to happen in several different places throughout the film. So we knew that we had to establish a theme that would occur in other places. And so it was going to be the story's theme. It wasn't just one person's theme. It was the Okrum's theme, the whole
Gotcha.
scenario. Not just RJ Mitty his character's theme or anything like that. It was the setting. It was the idea that these stories that happen between men, that happen in the cold, that happen when you're working your days away and your life slipping away on you, and you didn't realize what happened until you sort of lifted your head one day. That was sort of what we wanted to say.
Gotcha. And I think that comes through beautifully. It's also kind of interesting because it's sort of like the first Black Fawn film that you've worked on that isn't like a horror movie, right? And I'll Take Your Dead was more of a thriller as well, and certainly a genre mashup. And what Chad was able to do with that, with taking sort of like a crime sort of genre and mixing it with almost like a ghost story, but there were still horror elements in there, and there is in Okrum as well, but definitely more of a dramatic thriller and kind of like a gothic thriller as opposed to a straight horror movie. But did you find that your background and all your experience working on all these other horror movies, did that play into this score as well?
Not as much as in the past, but a little. I think the suspense and the tension definitely helped with the Okrum. I think we were building a similar style of tension in the Okrum that we do in the other horror movies. The only difference between the Okrum and other horror movies is that we're building toward a scare and a bit of a reaction, and it is very genre. I think we're still building tension with the Okrum, but we're not going to hit it over the head.
Gotcha.
Sort of more subtle. I'm not sure if that's a great explanation, but we're still, the similarity is that we're still building tension.
Awesome. So let's just jump into a couple of other comments right here. So Brad's actually gotten back to us, so that's great. Thanks for sticking around, Brad, and answering these questions because we need to know. He said Eastern European was what he was thinking, and no, he was born in Owen Sound, but he's got a big Scottish family. Sorry, and he loves Celtic music. So now I don't know if that clears up anything, but thanks, Brad.
Well, I think I know what you mean by the Eastern, like when she's kind of like going into the fine little like the fast movement on the violin is kind of got a Middle Eastern or Eastern European kind of vibe. Not Middle Eastern, but Eastern European. And I wish I could answer that for you, but that's a Bridget question.
Just jumping in here as well. So Alexander said, listen, hey, wow, we need these soundtrack albums. Is there any plan to do that? I know I don't think we've chatted about this specifically, but I would say that I have been asked before whether there was like a compilation soundtrack album that you were thinking of putting out, which would feature, tracks from all the films that you've done. And, for me personally, and I think there's a lot of other people out there would probably agree, is that now that vinyl's back, is this not the perfect time?
So I just got some information that yes, we are putting out some soundtracks.
Oh, there you go, Alexander. I hope that you heard it here first. I don't think that's been anywhere else. So, and any timeline on that as far as you can't tell us, but is there kind of a rough timeline to see those come out?
They will be, I can't say when.
Okay, that's fine. But
it's going to be soon.
In the near future.
Yeah. Like not ridiculously long wait, but rather coming up. It's coming up.
Couple things here. Just got a quick question here. So do you always get to write to a finished film, or do you begin earlier on in the production with the script and the themes?
Sometimes I'll start after I've received the script, but it's more of it's pretty loose. It's just trying on some instrumentation and getting a general feel ahead of production. Rarely does it stick around, because once what shows up on camera really dictates what you're going to write. It might just give me, basically the only thing it does is tell me what not to do. I can't think of one time that writing before I've seen picture has worked. So usually if I'll get like a cut of the film, like even if it's a rough cut, that's when some of the writing will happen and begin. And usually though the best writing and the writing that sticks around is from when you get a locked cut, and then they kind of just say, okay, get to crack.
How about it? And you can start really diving in. So, because that's the thing that most people don't, I mean, I shouldn't say this. Most people understand this, but it's kind of like if you've ever watched any of those YouTube videos where it's like famous movie scenes without the music, like without the score, and they just look utterly ridiculous, because it's like there's one of Kevin Bacon in Footloose where he's dancing, but there's no music. So,
right.
So it just looks crazy, right? And it must be strange because us, like the general public, even myself, like I've never seen any of the films that Black Fawn's put out without music. Like I always see something that's got like the temp score in there, or at least a rough score. It's not like I'm just watching just the visual mix. So it must be kind of, I guess, is it hard to do that, or is it liberating to kind of get in and say, okay, now I can sort of do whatever I want here within reason? And is it kind of like having like a blank canvas, so to speak?
No, not usually. No. Usually there's a lot of discussion as to what's going to happen and what vibe we're going for. And then we'll run some tests in the beginning and try to find the sound, trying not to get too far into the project. Sorry. My phone was just going crazy.
That's okay.
Maybe if Cody or Chad is watching, maybe you can text Jeff and tell him I'm busy. Anyway,
that's how close knit this crew is, right? Like,
only if you're on here. But yeah, so usually there's a pretty good vision of what's going to be happening with the score. But as far as the nitty gritty, I get to have a lot of fun and try some stuff and see if the directors like it, and usually it's a yeah. Sometimes it's a no. That's what this is,
A couple more comments just before we get going here, but we've got what, I knew there was somebody out there, and it's friend of the Fawn, Kelly Michael Stewart. Yes, on vinyl. So you've got at least 2 sales. I know Chris G collects vinyl too, so you got 3 sales.
The question was on vinyl.
Yeah, is it coming out vinyl?
No, but
no.
I meant, like, are they coming out? They're coming out.
Okay. Sorry, Kelly. I tried.
starting with like maybe a Spotify release and whatnot, but vinyl would be amazing. You could check that out.
We'll see, Kelly. I'll work on it. I'll try and convince the powers that be that we can make that happen, because that would be actually pretty awesome to have too. So, and I know that a lot of our fans have asked about your songs. Just a quick. Oh, and Alexander's piping in here saying, "Yay, digital or CD." Looks like it's going to be digital. So, and then maybe a physical component down the road. We'll see. So, but and just to finish off here, we've got "I'll Take Your Dead" was without a doubt my favorite Black Fawn film score. I remember loving the music in this one so much that I went online to look up Steph Copeland while the credits were rolling. That's awesome. And if anyone's curious, you can look up Steph online. She has 2 websites, one for her singing songs and one for her scoring. So correct me if I'm wrong, StephCopelandmusic.com and then StephCopeland.com.
Yes.
So
I know that's a weird thing. I don't know really how to get around it.
Well, listen. We'll throw the websites up at the end of the broadcast here, so people can check you out, because I know you do have song samples up there. You were kind enough to share a bunch of them today on our Instagram. You took over our Instagram for the day, and so if people do want to hear some of the tracks, we heard some stuff from, and I've just got a few things here, but we heard some stuff from Let Her Out. We heard some stuff from Bed of the Dead, which has a song that's always requested. And the original song, I think, is on this Blu-ray. So if you buy the Blu-ray, it actually does feature the song on the special features. Of course, we've got "I'll Take Your Dead," and we've got "The Heretics," which also features a song that we always get asked about it. Where can we get it? Where can we buy it? Where can we listen to it? So for those of you who are asking, it's available, I think, on YouTube, that particular song, as well as on Spotify and everywhere. So look up Steph Copeland, check her out. Make sure you check out her tunes, and there should be some other full soundtrack albums coming shortly. And we'll obviously let us know. We'll help you spread the word, and we'll tell everyone that it's coming out. Now, we do have a segment on here called Rapid Fire. So we're going to put you in the hot seat and ask you some rapid fire questions that we've prepared. So I know you've got a little bit of a heads up on this, but are you ready to do that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So just to let everyone know, Rapid Fire is brought to you by Wellington Brewery. They are our sponsor. They make this delicious Hell's Lager, Hell's yeah. And they are located in Guelph. Right now they've got free local delivery in the Guelph, Kitchener, and Waterloo area, where you can go up to their convenient walk-up window at the Guelph Brewery location, located on Woodlawn Road in Guelph. They do keep us running Black Fawn Distro during the convention season. It's what powers us, keeps us going, but it's powered us and kept us going through this pandemic as well. So we appreciate their support and their sponsorship. Steph, rapid fire, let's jump in. It's basically kind of whatever first comes to mind. We're going to pressure you. We're not going to give you a lot of time to answer. You ready to do this?
Yes.
Okay, right. So rapid fire, yes or no. Hans Zimmer is a better composer than Danny Elfman.
No.
Okay. Rapid fire 2, you got to pick one. In the near future, you have a music business card, but it can only hold one of your songs. Which song would you pick for your
Gaslight.
music? Gaslight, eh? Okay. Let's see here. So you've got rapid fire. Help us out. Looking back on everything you've done up until now, what's the project you're most proud of and why?
Vicious Fun.
Okay.
Why? It was super cool. It's super cool, and it was a huge challenge, and I ended up really loving the score, and I got to play with a lot of synths, and I really liked synths. And I got to dive into the 80s, and I am a child of the 80s. So there's just many things.
Awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Vicious Fun is the new Black Fawn film that was just recently completed. It's actually having its U.S. premiere at Panic Fest in Kansas City, Missouri, USA, this week, actually. So it should be there. And also it'll be playing at Imagine Film Festival in the Netherlands, as well as Shivers Film Festival in Germany, and also I'm forgetting one, Biff in Brussels. So it's hitting the festival circuit pretty hard. It is set in the 80s. It's a fantastic film, and the soundtrack is a lot of the early reviews that have come out about the film. Really, they always mention this soundtrack because it's such a synth rock in the pocket soundtrack. It makes you feel like you're in the 80s, and not in a not in an overbearing kind of way. It feels like it's genuinely from a band that like was kicking around in the 80s that maybe people haven't heard about before. And at least that's what I took from it. Is that kind of how you approach that too?
I made sure I was using all 80s synths on it. I was I had extra time to score it too due to the pandemic, so I kind of went into the score a little bit with like more than I was able to dive into scores in the past. I kind of lived in it a lot more than others. So,
awesome.
Pardon me. I don't know.
Okay, so moving on. Hey, what do you want? You can collaborate with any artist, dead or alive. Who would you pick, and what would you want to work on?
Oh gosh, dead or alive? Who would you pick? What would you work on? Any other artist? I don't know. That's.
You can't think of anybody off the top of your head? This opportunity, if you say nothing, this opportunity leaves. You can't work with anybody.
I can't work with anyone. All right. I'll work with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross because they're sort of a duo.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
And would you do a song? Like would you do like a Nine Inch Nails song, or would you do a score?
A pop song with me on vocals. That would be like my little fun songwriting.
There we go. So I know. Hopefully, if Trent and Atticus are watching this one day, because they're looking up interviews with famous composers, hopefully they see this and we can make that happen. But if I ever do meet those guys, I will push that for sure, because I'd love to hear it. So, moving on. So listen, we don't really tend to talk about the pandemic anymore. We try not to, just because we know everyone's in the same boat. But talking about live music, what's the best concert you've ever seen?
Best concert I've ever seen. Well, John Carpenter live was pretty great. It was a small venue, but it was like a really good time because you knew all of the songs. We also went and saw Hans Zimmer. I know I'm naming composers, but I've seen 2 composers in concert, so that's just that. We saw Hans Zimmer live at the Air Canada Centre, and that was kind of an awesome experience because it was film music.
Was that one of the ones where they play it? There's like the full orchestra playing it too.
I know what the best show I ever saw was the Electric Six at not the Majestic Theater, bowling alley above the Majestic Theater in Detroit on Woodward. Oh, what is it freaking called? The Electric Six. This kick-ass rock band, and I don't know if they're from Detroit or not, but I used to live in Windsor, and we went down to see them, and the floor. People were jumping so much that the floor was going to cave in, and they had to actually like give out a warning that we're not allowed to jump, because otherwise we would have fallen onto a bowling alley underneath. The
Electric Six, they sound like they're from Detroit, right? Like that sounds like a Detroit
show. It was such a good rock show. The lead singer like sings it like he's got somewhere else and something better to do, but he's just got to do this job of being the of the rock. And like he's the best. It was such a good show.
And that's a good segue into my last question. So before you all get too excited, rapid fire question, our last question for the evening is what's the bustling metropolis of Wallaceburg, Ontario most famous for?
Well, they used to make hockey sticks there, and then they used to make a lot of glass. But I would say they're probably most famous for the hockey sticks.
Hockey sticks. And according to your IMDb bio, you grew up there, right? Is that where you're?
Yeah.
Is that where you would still kind of call home, I guess, or?
I mean, I was 18 when I left Wallaceburg, so yeah, that's where I grew up. I grew up out in the country, like outside of Wallaceburg, like 15-minute drive into town on a dirt road,
Yeah.
And then.
Same here. Yeah. I lived on the outskirts of a small town, which is like the boonies. Yeah. So I get to ask that question for anybody from any Wallaceburgians out there that are upset by me asking that. But yeah, I know where you're coming from.
then we moved into town when I was in high school, or just before. But yeah, you know, the nice thing about a dirt road, every like 3 or 4 years, it gets graveled.
Yeah,
Special.
it's a big event too.
Every your life changed.
So let's thanks so much, Steph. Just a little bit of fun. Thanks for doing the rapid fire. Brought to you everyone out there by Wellington Brewery. They produce the fantastic lager, Hell's Yeah. But thanks for doing that, Steph. It's just a little bit of fun. We try and put every guest we like to hit every guest with some hard hitting journalistic questions if we can. But jumping back into talking about Vicious Fun. What else do you have coming up in 2021? I mean, we're kind of coming out of this pandemic, sort of. So it seems like people might have some extra free time or may not. We're not sure yet. But what other projects are you working on right now that you can tell us about? And when can we expect to hear you in a film score going forward?
Yeah. Well, at around Christmas time, I got to score this really cool horror movie called The Retreat. By Clique Pictures, and it's really cool. I loved every minute of it. It's got all the things that a horror movie should have. I think everybody here would totally enjoy it. And after that, I did a movie of the week thriller, and I really enjoyed. This was my very first thriller movie of the week, and I really enjoyed it. It was you have all the suspense and tension, but then you have like a little bit of like the classical orchestral drama that you'd expect. And I found that really enjoyable. And now I'm working on another one of those, just about to start. And so if you're watching like some daytime thrillers, maybe even primetime, I'm not really sure about where they go. But I should find that out.
And how long does it take you to complete a score? Like in general, I know everything's different and things have changed obviously over the last 12 months with everything that's going on in the world. But typically when you start something from beginning to end, how does that look like from a timeline wise? And how do you line up like multiple projects, right? I mean, obviously it must be tricky to work on 2 different projects simultaneously. Do you do that a lot as well?
I try not to, but it happens. I phone a friend when it does. I like to. I've worked with like other composers on a few projects. Like Sean Nimmons Patterson is a good friend of mine who we scored The Wedding Planners on City TV together, and he's always there when you're in a pinch. Also, like Adrian Ellis, who I've worked with several times on a lot of like movies of the week and things like that. And a few like a lot of other people. I don't feel like I should name everybody that I call, but those guys know that I call them because they're always on the other end of the line. So yeah, when things get overlapping, it's common to call a buddy and help you out.
That just kind of keeps things. I mean, it's hard to draw inspiration for another project when you're trying to funnel that inspiration into something that might be totally different, right? Yeah. Good stuff. So
usually, like the common timeline is you have 4 weeks for about 90 minutes.
Right. I mean, have you ever been right up to that ending point where you're crunching the stuff down?
Every time.
No comment. No, I
said every single time because I tend to just work until time. I'll finesse and I'll try to do pretty things. Until time runs out of me, until the clock runs out.
And do you find that because I've heard this comment from not all artists, but just the stuff I've read in the press and that sort of stuff, is that is it hard for you to figure out when something's totally done? Or do you feel like you always need to go back and maybe tinker and like, is there a point where you're like, this is it, this is totally finished, I don't need to touch it anymore? Or how do you operate? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you can, when there's time to finish it, when you're finished. But usually when the clock is ticking, you get everything to a place where you're like, yep, okay, pretty good. If there's time, I'm going to come back and sweeten that and sweeten that and sweeten that. But sometimes you just you cruise, and then anything that needs, any extra attention, it's a bonus if you get to you never deliver unfinished work, obviously, but like,
Yeah, of course.
you could tweak forever, I think. And
Right.
a deadline is probably just healthy because,
Gotcha.
yeah, that's my answer.
So yeah, no, thank you. And let's dive into a couple last minute questions or last minute comments here from everyone that's tuning in tonight. For anyone who hasn't, know somebody who would like to check this out and like to see the interview with Steph, obviously this will be running on a rerun on our YouTube page as well as our Facebook channel. We are broadcasting live to Twitch right now as well. So thank you for everyone for tuning in. We've just got a quick question back from Brad as well. Hey, would Steph, would you have done this episode if it was in the style of a Hot Wings or Hot Ones episode, which is, I'm sure you've seen the show with the eating of the hot chicken wings? No.
I live under a rock. That's the one thing about
What's
this.
that?
I live under a rock, so.
I'll tell you about that after we go off the air.
I like spicy food.
Okay, so yeah, it's Hot Ones is just basically celebrities go on and they have to answer all these questions, but they eat 10 wings in a row and each wing gets ridiculously more hot.
Really?
Yeah,
I would do it because I'd be interested to know what I can handle.
And for the record, the craziest person that's been on that show that's done, I think, the most that I was like blown away was Halle Berry. Halle Berry loves spicy food, and she like killed that show more than any other person that's ever been on it that I've seen anyway. So yeah, I've just provided you with a new time killer. So we'll talk about it after we go off the air. But so we've got a quick comment from John as well. Wallaceburg, living large north of Chatham.
Yeah, Chatham. My dad lives there.
Yeah. And last comment from obviously someone that's running our account right now says Wallaceburg is most famous for Steph Copeland. So, anyway, thanks so much for doing this stuff. I know that lots of people out there love your work and love kind of what you've been doing over the years. For anyone who's curious, you can definitely check out Steph's work online. You can go to both of her websites, which is StephCopelandmusic.com and StephCopeland.com. Also, as well, you can follow her on Instagram, which we highly recommend that you do. She's relinquishing the command of our Instagram account after this interview. So we thank you for not we thank you for posting all the things that you've done today and not causing too much trouble online. But also as well, for anyone out there, make sure you go online, go to YouTube, subscribe to Steph Copeland's YouTube channel. Just type in Steph Copeland into the mix and you'll get subscribe to that channel and make sure you'll get all the updates to her new music, new mixes, as well as new songs like Gaslight, which just dropped and available online on iTunes, as well as Spotify and anywhere you can probably stream music. So Gaslight, check it out. Keep your eye out online for these soundtracks that are coming. You'll keep us posted?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, awesome. And
this brand new development. So
you heard it here first. Takeover Tuesday, Black Fawn Distro. We deliver the goods and the scoops that film fans in Canada and beyond want to know. So thanks so much, Steph, for joining us today. We will end just with our obligatory stay safe and help out post. We'll just say, listen, we still are in a pandemic. I know various people are in various stages of lockdown across the country and in Ontario as well as beyond. But please wear a mask, wash your hands, practice social distancing, check in with your family and friends, make sure they're doing okay. We're almost out of the woods. Hopefully we can get back to normal, maybe this year, maybe next year, who knows. But hopefully we can see you perform when we do get back to normal in a live show setting with a live audience, playing songs off your follow-up solo record.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really fun day.
Awesome.
Well, password before you can get back into your account.
Yeah. So, Steph, thanks again. Stick around. We'll catch up a little bit after the broadcast, after we go off air. But again, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple more weeks with another edition of Takeover Tuesday, where we'll be relinquishing our Instagram account to some other marauder that is going to be posting a whole bunch of behind the scenes stills and photos and that sort of thing. So again, Steph, thanks so much. And we'll see you soon.